Stadium, site of today's matchup between the number 4 Ohio State Buckeyes and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. That game will kick off at noon. Pre-game show kicks off live right now. I'm joined by Tony Gerderman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, I guess let's start with the big news of the day. Ohio State will be without 3 starters. 2 of them we knew. Josh Simmons, we knew was out for the season. We knew that Will Kazmarek was going to be out long-term. Lathan Ransom was allegedly day-to-day earlier in the week. We anticipated that day-to-day would be more of a week-to-week thing, and it has turned out that Lathan Ransom is out for the Ohio State game.
Yeah, he's indeed out. One of the several players who's out, but it's something that they've obviously been preparing for because he's not been able to practice, so he's not going to be able to play. But not a surprise given that Ryan Day finally admitted on Wednesday that there was an issue. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about replacing him and whether the fix is quick or long term. Whether or not what is long term? 3 weeks?
I mean, well, if he's not back for the Penn State game, that could feel like a long term for this team, because 3 weeks with 3 weeks during the non-conference schedule, Donovan Jackson being out for 2 weeks during the non-conference schedule. It was like, it was 2 weeks. That's not long term. This time of year, 2 weeks can be very long term.
Yeah, for sure. Big games, big moments, and so when Ryan Day says day to day, week to week, we kind of,
we have been talking to Ryan Day long enough to know when he says words, what those words actually mean, which is not necessarily the dictionary definition of those words.
No, I think we've also said Lathan Ransom recovers faster than most, or maybe anybody, and so there would be hope that he could be back for Penn State, but that's based on no information that I have.
Right.
It's just you'd love to get him back for Penn State. Clearly not ready to go now, not listed as questionable or game time decision. He's listed as out. But I'm still not expecting him back against Penn State because I have not been told that, hey, he could be back for Penn State, other than by Ryan Day, who said he's day to day.
Right.
Which,
I think here's what we can report. They would love to have him back for Penn State. Will they have him back for Penn State? We'll see. They would love to have him back for Penn State. We'll see. So then the obvious question then is, okay, now what at the safety position? Because we've talked about it. I think we have a leader in the clubhouse of Lorenzo Styles Jr. plays nickel. You move Jordan Hancock back to one of the safety spots. But there are a million different ways they can approach this, and it's just, do you want to play the guy who's the backup at his position? Do you want to have all veteran guys on the field? Do you want to have the least possible disturbance in terms of number of different positions you're shifting around? There are a million different ways they can approach this. Which one do you think it is?
Well, when they talk about the offensive line, you go with the best 5, except when this time now with Zem Mahalski, they're going with the backup left tackle, who was not one of the best 5 in theory. So do you just here go, as you said, with just Lathan Ransom's backup, or the best 5 in the secondary? And I know Jordan Hancock has been working at safety, so I'm going to assume that's what they do, because while it may not be the most seamless, it still kind of is, because when you play that nickel, as we've said all week, you do also have to play safety when a receiver motions in a certain way, and then all of the receivers, all of the safeties will shift, and it is called a 3 safety defense. So Jordan Hancock has been cross-trained there, and so him being a 5th-year senior at this point, 4th-year senior, fourth year, this would be he has the experience. He has not just the veteran of I can handle the change. He's also played the position in a roundabout way. And then Lorenzo Styles has played every single game so far this year and has played on defense. So, he's also a 4th-year veteran guy at this point, I believe. So, or 3rd year, 4th year.
4th year.
Yeah.
Yes.
The red shirt's always. So 2 years at Notre Dame last year, red shirt. So he's been the starting dime, move up 1 spot to nickel. That is what I think they will do. Now then the question is Jordan Hancock a free safety, or is he going to be strong safety, replace Lathan Ransom, and Caleb Downs just does what he's been doing?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think they're going to put him at the adjuster position and have Caleb Downs maybe down more in the box, because this is probably more of a you haven't seen a ton of deep throws from Nebraska, so there's probably going to be more action closer to the line of scrimmage. I saw Mika earlier ask about Jaden Bonsu and Ray Dave now saying hopefully they can work McLean and Bonsu in. Jaden Bonsu, I think, is probably, he's not, we've talked about a lot of different possibilities. He's not someone who is kind of the next man up anywhere right now, because you've got McLean is kind of the next guy up at the adjuster position, whether they use him as the next man up or not. Malik Hartford is kind of being the next guy up at the adjuster position, which is the deep safety position. Did I say bandit earlier?
You said adjuster.
Okay, I thought I said twice. Yes,
and really, they both played both spots.
Yeah,
so.
they've both played both spots, but I feel like McLean is more the backup at the bandit or boundary safety position. Malik Hartford has been more of the backup at the adjuster or deep safety position, and then Lorenzo Styles has really kind of been the backup at the nickel position behind Jordan Hancock. So those are kind of the three guys where in some combination it's going to be one of those three guys. I'm with you. I kind of think you go Lorenzo Styles and then you move Jordan Hancock back to deep safety and you move Caleb Downs over to bandit and move on. Mika wants to know, do we see more Jermaine Matthews? Maybe.
That's a question that I have as well, because they'd like to play more. I would assume at this point Jermaine Matthews becomes the Lorenzo Styles. He becomes the dime. He'll be in there on long distances. But I also would expect that he's gotten more time at nickel this week, so I wouldn't be shocked if we see him there as well. Back to Bonsu. He's been injured for a lot of the season as well, so he may be behind just from that as well. Now, he ran with the ones all throughout spring when Lathan Ransom was still out from last year's injury, so he got that kind of work, but he's kind of behind everybody else right now.
Cecil been asking who are the other two starters out. We talked about that a little earlier. Josh Simmons, left tackle, obviously out for the year. Will Kazmarek, tight end, he's out
Co-starters.
Yeah, he's out for a while. I mean, I think he might have had more snaps than G. Scott, and has started some games but not all the games. So everything's a little bit ish. But yeah, Josh Simmons we knew was out. Will Kazmarek we knew was out, and then now we gotta. We'll see how long.
I will say, when Ohio State releases the availability report, the only two players they have listed out for the season are Josh Simmons and TC Caffey.
Yes.
So
yeah,
there is something there as well. If it was, Ryan Day said it's not a long-term thing for Lathan. He did say it'll be a while at one point for both Ransom and Kazmarek, but they're not saying Kazmarek is out for the season. Whatever the arm, elbow, shoulder thing was on the complete and total catch against Oregon.
Yeah, and the other name that we haven't mentioned yet that's on the availability report that is a name of some note is Aaron Scott, backup corner, true freshman, but he's been someone who you've seen sort of working his way into that rotation. He's looked impressive in the little bits of time that we've seen him. He's not someone who you would expect to have a big impact next week against Penn State. If this game gets to 4 touchdowns, you might have seen Aaron Scott, but you're not going to see him now because he is out as well.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. He had kind of moved past Calvin Simpson-Hunt in snaps, so this is a little bit of a setback, but again, he's a guy that's going to be able to catch up quickly because he already caught up quickly once, so however much time he misses. And these kinds of things just pop up all the time for freshmen, where it's like, it's just this, tweak this. It's like, well, whatever, just hold him out.
Right. Aaron Scott is not, there was virtually no scenario where Aaron Scott was going to be the deciding factor in this game this week, so you hold him out, you let him, if it's a starter, that's one thing. One thing that's interesting, a name that was not on there was Quinshon Judkins. He was not on the availability report, so he is available. Now, we have seen guys who are available who don't actually play, but I think that's definitely good news for Ohio State because we know he's had a little bit of a thing with his hand. Ryan Day said that was unrelated to the fumble at Oregon, but the fact that he's not on there, we'll see if he actually plays or not, but the fact that he's not on there feels like that's good news.
Yeah, for sure. Not questionable, not anything, just ready to go. And honestly, I don't think you can, they're 25.5-point favorites or whatever, but Nebraska has a pretty good defense, so I think you want all hands on deck that are there, especially when he is coming off of a pretty poor game. Quinshon Judkins, 2 yards a carry against Oregon. I don't think you want to come from that and then have a week off and then sit him and now, okay, here's Penn State now.
Yeah.
Go get him, Tiger, as Urban Meyer would say.
Yeah, and you mentioned Nebraska having a pretty good defense. They are pretty solid all around. They are. I'm going to pull the stats that from my memory of Kevin's Tale of the Tape article this week. He does that great column every week, and I think he used yards per game and not yards per carry, which I will slap him on the hand for later. But Nebraska was something like 19th in the country in yards per game allowed on the ground, 55th in yards per game through the air. this is a game where this is not going to be the single best rushing defense Ohio State plays all season, but when you have Quinshon Judkins down whatever percentage he's down, he's not 100%, and you also have Zen Michalski at left tackle, that's potentially going to be a little bit of a challenge for the Buckeyes today.
Yeah, for sure. And you lose Will Kazmarek, who's your best blocking tight end as well. There are a number of reasons why there may be a slow start or some struggles that you're going to want to work through. You're going to want everybody to work together, and this is how G. Scott and Bennett Christian work with Zen Michalski, and how Quinshon Judkins works with them, and Travion Henderson and Will Howard and all of those guys. So, yeah, I think if you don't need to hold Quinshon Judkins out, and it doesn't sound like they do, then you want to get him some work. You want to get him back up to speed. You want to build that momentum, because you're going to need the running game next week more than ever.
Yeah.
Since the last time they were out west since the last time they were on the road.
Since the last time they went in a direction from Columbus, yes. Bucks Forever 65 with a great point here. Don't expect to beat Indiana beat Nebraska like Indiana did this week. They didn't play well last week. It doesn't mean they won't play well this week. And one other piece of that is, not only did they not play well, they turned the ball over 5 times, and they were 0 for 5 on 4th downs. That's a lot of empty possessions in scoring territory. That's given up some short fields. That's everything. And very easily, you take the 2 19-yard Indiana drives off the board, and now you're down to 42.
Yeah.
And then you give Nebraska a couple field goals out of their 4 or 5 red zone trips that were empty. All of a sudden, boom, it's 42-13 instead of 56-7, and that's a very different look. I mean, yeah, you still lost by a bunch, and Indiana's presumably a significantly better team than Nebraska is at the moment, but 56-7 is one kind of game, and it wasn't really a 56-7 game except for it was 14-7 Indiana with like 5 minutes to go before halftime. So that's a little more representative of the kind of game it is. I would echo that caution there. Like, don't expect 63-3 today. I picked, we're going to go way out of order on our short thing, but I picked, I think, 34-6. And I was, I think, the lowest of anyone on the staff in terms of score, but like a 34-6, 34-10 kind of game, something like that. I mean, you said they're favored by 25 points, so that's right kind of in line with the point spread. I think if it's 34-10, everyone's going to look and go, well, Indiana beat this team 56-7. Why did Ohio State not beat them like that?
Yeah, and as I've said before, stop trying to compare yourself to Indiana. It's just not.
For 100 years, Ohio State football fans have measured their program.
There's Ohio State, and then there's Indiana. Just stay in your zone. Stay in your sweet spot. But yeah, I mean, one-off games like that where just if you don't have an avalanche in this game, then you're not going to get that.
Right.
Like, there was a complete avalanche in the Indiana-Nebraska game. And again, that was a 5.5, 6.5 point line, 6.5 point, I think. But yeah. Just because it went bad last week doesn't mean it's going to go terrible for Nebraska this week. And they're going to react to how poorly they played last week. Like, let's calm down on the mistakes. We probably won't go for it on all of these 4th downs, because there may not be any 4th and 1s or 4th and 2s. They may be just sitting with 4th and 7s, and so they're going to punt and make Ohio State drive. Like, just simple things like that. Like, so if Ohio State's defense is better on 3rd downs than Indiana's was, then they force punts rather than missed 4th downs. Like, just Ohio State's defense can play better than Indiana's in that sense, and still give up more points.
Yeah. Tamara wanted to know, does Ohio State or does Nebraska sell out to stop the run, or do they try and double Jeremiah Smith? And this is one of these things that we talk to coaches about just about after every game at this point, opposing coaches in those post-game press conferences. You got to kind of pick your poison against this Ohio State team. I feel like sort of the default answer for a lot of teams is stop the run first. That's kind of the default old school football coach answer. What do you think Nebraska does today?
Yeah, it's interesting where you have that, stop the run first, and that's what people try to do, but also compound that with Will Howard saying they're playing a lot of deep safeties to stop the deep shots. And so you can't really do both. And which has allowed a lot of the intermediate 20-yard completions, 15-yard completions, and some of the 6 or 7-yard completions that are essentially part of the running game. But with anybody, you're trying to stop the run and then go from there. Because if you can't stop that, then you can't stop anything. Like,
right.
And if you're going to keep safeties back, they're going to continue to run it, and then you keep moving closer to the line of scrimmage. And then it's still about blocking and, Tom, as you know, tackling. And
Big if true.
Big if true. But I think with these running backs, with the quarterback that they have, you stop the run, you try to stop the run, but also know that the RPO eliminates, like it's an unfair advantage for the offense, essentially.
Yeah.
And then you have these receivers that the secondary is so concerned about that they will back off of because they don't want to get beat deep, and then that allows a lot of the short passing. So even if you try to stop the run, there's still other ways to move the ball for sure.
On the other side of the ball, when Nebraska has the ball, all eyes will be on former Ohio State 5-star quarterback commit Dylan Raiola. Did he end up at Ohio State? Well, eventually, but he had to take a plane from Lincoln, Nebraska to get here. He talked this week about the fact that he'd been to 3 Ohio State games as a commit and knew a bunch of the guys on the Ohio State team, but obviously on the visiting sideline later today. And Dylan Raiola has been, we talk about the 5-star quarterback and we talk about the true freshman quarterback, and boy, Dylan Raiola has really personified both of those things at the same time at various points this season.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of boom, there's a lot of bust, and you just got got to let them explore the room. And you take the good, you take the bad, Tom.
But Tony, what if I take them both? What do I have then?
There you have the facts of life. But yeah, he's got really, really good arm talent, as they say. So you try to make him let him make the most of it. But at some point, you got to stop being a freshman. And now this is his eighth. This will be his 8th start. At what point, starting all of those games, he's probably thrown 300 passes almost at this point. And yet, in his last 2 games, he's thrown 4 interceptions. You should be. You're most experienced right now. The level of competition has increased throughout the season. No offense to Colorado, but at some point, I say at some point you got to stop being a freshman, but also at some point you hit the freshman wall.
Right. Yeah, and it's definitely a series of small progressions when you're a freshman. You don't just immediately go from 1 week you're a freshman to next week, okay, now I've seen it all. Now I've seen everything and I've watched enough film and now I know everything that's going to happen. I think there's a certain amount of, it's like a rookie coming up to the major leagues. You come up and you hit right away and then, okay, and then the league figures out, okay, hey, you can't turn on the inside pitch. And then they start throwing the inside pitch. Then how do you adjust to that? I think you're seeing some of that with Dylan Raiola right now too, where, okay, he looked really good at the start. Now defenses are throwing some different coverages at him that he maybe hasn't seen at the college level. So now what? Now how does he adjust to that? And then once he adjusts to that, okay, how do you adjust to the adjustment? So if you guys are watching right now, we appreciate that, and we appreciate it even more if you hit the thumbs up button. It will help other folks find this show now and later as well. Actually, keep throwing those comments in there as well. We're going to go for a little bit longer. We do have some stuff we're going to do. We have more behind-the-scenes stuff planned for this morning. If you have not seen our behind-the-scenes series, you can go to BuckeyeHuddle.com right now. There's an article on the front page with the most recent one. Yes, we'll get Andrew S. You've got to join the show earlier. We've talked about it twice already. We'll get there. We had a behind-the-scenes series on inside the tunnel with Ohio State as they come down the tunnel and run out on the field. Behind-the-scenes series on that. We did a behind-the-scenes series on the band's ramp entrance. Behind-the-scenes show on what it's like to cover a game for a day. You can find that all at BuckeyeHuddle.com or just search behind the scenes Buckeye Huddle, and you will find all of that stuff. So, okay, so and to answer Andrew's question, the 3 starters out today. Number 1, Lathan Ransom. Number 2, Will Kazmarek, tight end. Number 3, Josh Simmons, the left tackle. So those are your 3 starters who are out today. Nebraska, going back to Nebraska, we talked a little bit about the quarterback and the throwing position. Now, let's talk about the Nebraska run game. And the Nebraska run game is not great. They have averaged about 3.7 yards per carry. That's like 95th in the country. It is, they are kind of middling on most of the other offensive stats, kind of in the 50s. They're like 1 yard per carry below middling at this point. Like 1 yards per carry was get you in, 1 more yard per carry gets you in the 50s. They're in the 90s. So they are really, really not great on the ground, and they're actually missing one of their running backs as well, Ramir Johnson. He is out. Now he's been kind of like one of about 3 guys who's gotten carries, but you're down a guy. I just don't know. No one has been able to run the ball particularly well against Ohio State. I don't think Nebraska's gonna be able to do that, and that feels like that's going to be a big problem. Okay, first of all, it's incredible super chat from Wayne Taylor, $17.34. Good morning to the best in the biz. Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate that. The $17.34. If you're wondering what the significance of that number is, those are numbers that we do in our bold prediction show. Those are numbers we use a lot. Hey, they're going to score from the 17-yard line or the 34-yard line or whatever. So thank you, Wayne. Appreciate that.
The running game, and Ramir Johnson, he's one of 3 running backs that was started this year for Nebraska. To give you an idea of how things have gone there, and saw somebody else asking if Dylan Raiola is a running threat. He is not.
No.
He's Kyle McCord-like, basically. I think he's around negative 45 yards rushing.
His interceptions last week didn't all get run back for touchdowns, so he's not exactly. But.
So not a running threat. He can move around a little bit and keep things going. He will move around in order to throw, generally in order to throw back across the field and to perhaps a linebacker who is waiting to intercept it, things like that. So he'll run around a little bit to keep things alive. But he's not Patrick Mahomes.
Well, he gets compared to Patrick Mahomes, and some of that is the haircut, and some of that is the game. But it's a little bit like, if you've ever had an older dog and also a brand new puppy, and it's like, it's just like, look, he's doing the same things as the big dog. It's like, yeah, but then, he's like, he runs and then he falls over and slides on his side across the linoleum floor. It's like, yeah, it's sort of the same, but it's very much not the same thing. He may get there. The talent is there for him to get there. He's probably not going to get there in the next 6 hours.
Yeah, and what won't happen, or what generally doesn't happen, or hasn't happened yet this season, is he's not going to be a complement to that running front. He's not going to be Will Howard.
No.
And Will Howard, frankly, hasn't done what he's done at Kansas State yet. There is still that game, I think, coming where he's got 60 or 80 yards rushing in the game, but you're not going to. I don't know how often you're going to see Dylan Raiola pull it and take off. Their reads are more RPO stuff rather than run options.
And they don't want, that's not really his game. They also really don't want him to get hit. I mean, you really don't want him to get hit too much.
And they run with their other quarterback, Heinrich Harburg,
yes.
Who started last year, plays some tight end, will play some wildcat now, but they'll get their running action from him. He can do the read options with whatever running back is back there.
And finally, we don't normally talk a ton of special teams on this show, but boy, some of the special teams for both of these teams has been a little bizarre. Nebraska's 4 for 9 on field goals this year. They are 133rd out of 134 teams in net punting this year. Ohio State's kick returns are 133rd in the country, 9 yards per return. It's bizarre that you have these, this level of special teams play. And Matt Rule is the kind of coach who is the kind of veteran coach that you sort of expect to have that kind of stuff buttoned up. It is not buttoned up this year, so that's one other thing to just sort of keep in mind. That's probably also one of the reasons why you go for it a little more often on 4th down than you might otherwise. We are going to wrap it up here in just a minute because we do have to go run and shoot a whole different segment in just a minute. But let's. I gave my score prediction earlier, 34-6 Ohio State. What do you see happening today?
I believe I went 42-14, and again, the missed field goals. Maybe there's going to be a missed field goal in there.
Yeah.
That's why they did the 14 there. But I think it'll be easy enough for Ohio State. Easy enough. I mean.
Yeah. And then it's on to Penn State. But first, let's not rush things. I was looking at my parking passes and my wallet on my phone. I was like, oh boy, that is we're running out of home games. Only 3 left after this one. So the season is flying by. Make sure you enjoy all of it. We hope you enjoy it with us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. Got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well, making you a smarter football fan. All at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Also, make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell so you get notified. We will be back with our live post-game show after the game as well. Should be a lot to talk about this game, as well as get the chance to finally take a little bit of a look ahead at one of the biggest games on the schedule against Penn State coming up next weekend. That'll do it for now. Super chat from John A. Still waiting here in Texas for Kevin to try the old 96er. Yes, believe me, You don't need to sell us. We need to get down to Texas at some point. Now, that's in Amarillo, I believe, which is not particularly close to any bowl sites or places Ohio State will be. But
how many baked potatoes do you have to eat with that?
I think it's just one baked potato, but you also have to eat a salad and a roll. So
of course you want the salad.
Listen, I am all for Kevin eating the Big 96er. So we'll see if we can make that happen. Thank you to John. Thank you to everyone. We will talk to you guys after the game.